Welcome to Orlando, the happiest place on earth. And my home. Welcome to my home. Listen, I know that traditionally when elected officials stand before you, they usually speak about their favorite subject. That would be me. But I'm going to do something a little different today. I'm going to talk about something that happened a long time ago, but has deep meaning for America today. 96 years ago, in Ludlow, Colorado, something happened which is never discussed in our public schools. And you really have to know a lot about the history of the labor movement to have even heard of it. But I want to tell you that story today, and then I'll tell you why. John D. Rockefeller, the richest man in American history, who by today's dollars had more than 100 billion of those dollars, more than Bill Gates, more than anybody else in our history. He owned the coal mines of Colorado 100 years ago. And in those coal mines, there was nothing but piecework. No hourly wages, no benefits, just here's the coal, give me my money. In fact, they didn't even pay people for the work that needed to be done to make those mines safe. They didn't give them any money for shoring up the roofs. And not surprisingly, those roofs often fell. Each year, 1% of all the miners in America died from industrial injuries and death. There were no United Mine Workers then. There was no labor or safety regulations. There was no minimum wage. Nothing to protect people from John Rockefeller's wrath and greed. And boy, was he greedy. Now, what happened was the United Mine Workers arose, and they organized those workers in Ludlow, Colorado, to a man. Everyone joined the union. And John D. Rockefeller refused to negotiate. He would not see them, he would not hear them. His representatives said, go jump in the lake. We're not going to have anything to do with you. Here's the deal. You give us the coal, we give you the money, that's it. That's all you're going to get. So what they did was something that we take for granted today, but then was unheard of 96 years ago. They went out on strike. Now, Ludlow was a company town, much like the coal mining towns of West Virginia. You lived in a building that was erected by the coal company. You bought your food in the company store. The company owned the streets that you walked on when you made your way to work. The company owned everything. So when those workers went on strike, they were thrown out of their homes. They were literally tossed out of their own homes because they no longer were willing to work for slave wages. Now, I'm not talking about the 13th century or the 3rd century. I'm talking about less than 100 years ago, right here in America. They were thrown out in the middle of the winter in Colorado, out of their homes. So what they did was they gathered in a place outside the company town. It was down the road a bit, and they pitched tents. And in the snow, in the cold, they tried to survive. The company town grocery store would not let them in. But somehow or other, they managed to get the food to live on. And then John D. Rockefeller's goons told them that they were still on company property and they needed to go. And they said, no, we have no place to go. We're going to stay in our tents. So Rockefeller called out the National Guard and burned that tent city to the ground. 19 people died, including 2 women and 11 children. In order to try to stay warm, when they pitched the tents, they dug out the ground underneath so that they'd be underneath the wind. And when those tents were set on fire, they collapsed on them and buried them alive, and they burned to death. 19. And the same thing happened in Haymarket Square. The same thing happened at the Homestead Massacre. And because of that grief, we ended up 15 years later with the National Labor Relations Act, the right for you to organize. And we ended up with the Mine Safety Act, and we ended up with the Occupational Safety and Health Act. And maybe, just maybe today, we will end up with the Employee Free Choice Act. So that these people will not have died in vain. Now, when you go home from Orlando, I ask you one thing. I ask you to tell your children what I just said. Because as I said before, they will not teach this in the public schools. So the only way that our children can find out about the proud history of the labor movement is for you and me to tell them. And also to tell them these 7 words that we must never forget. The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated. Are you with me? Thank you very much.